30 years ago, last year, we had a building company with a franchise. We were in Orewa, we were doing well, and then of course the share market crash from 87 filtered through, and suddenly it was terrifying because we were tied into a franchise that allowed nothing except that type of house to be built, and no houses were selling. We couldn't even do additions and alterations to keep the turnover going, so it was good night nurse basically. So of course, because we lost our company, we then lost our house. Couldn't pay the mortgage. It was 14 months before my husband got work because I had been working as a building rep at the time, and I'm down at North Shore, and when I handed my notice in, 48 builders from the North Shore and surrounds wrote to apply for my job. Now, builders do not like to write letters, so you know, it was a pretty good indication that it was really, really tight. We found that we had a, once they sold our house in a mortgagee sale, they basically took the first offer, which left us with a $30,000, just under 29,000 something, shortfall. And at the time, for some reason, the government thought that they would make examples of people, so not everybody, it didn't happen to everybody, but they picked just random. These people would have, the housing court had underwritten our mortgage, so they said, well, there's a $30,000 shortfall, so you're going to have to pay that. So there we were with no house, nothing. We basically had our furniture and our clothes. I was going to say our kids, well, you had those two, which was pretty tough on them, but at the time going through all the drama, I didn't actually even think of the emotional impact on them. It's just now that they're adults, talking with them about it was pretty hard. So we thought that, well, I was raised on a farm. Liz periodically worked on a farm, and it felt like going back to the country would be a nice place to go and lick our wounds. So just God moving all the way through this. That was actually the best thing that could have happened to us, because it kind of flipped us up totally. It hurt like crazy hitting the wall, but God sure got our attention, stood us up, said, okay, come on now, this is how we're going to do this. We were able to rent a 5.5 acre lifestyle block down at Piccalilli, and that was fantastic. We were there for 2 years, and it was an absolute salve to our souls. It was an absolute healing place. It was 27k to the nearest town, and as I said, we had nothing. We did a garage sale the week before we left, the kids and I, and we whizzed off down with the proceeds from that. We whizzed off down from Orewa down to Piccalilli, and the kids got to know the place while I dug the vegetable patch over and planted seeds and seedlings the week before we moved in. And it was such a cool thing. The week later, when we drove in that gate, the first thing I did was go check my vegetable garden, and seeing the growth on my seedlings. Sorry, it's just that. It's okay, we're away again, you know. I was I'm number 7 of 8 children, and we were dairy farming, and it's times when dairy farming wasn't very profitable at all. So it was always a struggle, and I just hugely admire my parents, how they managed to feed and clothe 8 kids. But I hadn't realised how much, so I was born in 1956, so I hadn't realised how much I had learnt just living with my mother, who managed to make ends meet, you know, and so going back there, it really was in lots of ways like going back home, because, you know, things like where we went one water tank, so suddenly, whoa, we've got to be really, really careful with the water, particularly through summer. So suddenly learning to bath in 2 inches of water again instead of the luxurious town baths that we had, you know, man, you just never ever appreciate that water until you've got to measure it out, and then you're never the same again. You never ever. I got to be quite a pest at people's places if they turned the tap on over the sink and didn't put the plug in. I'd leap up and put the plug in and say, don't waste that. But yeah, just the realization of how our life was just so it's wasteful, but it's, yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's not wasteful, and maybe it's good to live like that if you can, but we couldn't, so we managed. Anyway, I went, by the second year there, I was able to buy my first house cow. We were doing really well with our vegetables and fruit and stuff then. the neighbour down the road said, why on earth are you growing lettuces? There's a stand just down this road, a roadside stall where you can buy lettuces for $1. And I said to him, well mate, if I grow lettuces here, that means I've got an extra $1 that I can spend on something that I can't produce. And it's how I had to learn to work with it. So yeah, it was pretty much chucked in at the deep end, and we swam, and don't really understand. I mean, I know how God does it and how he can do it and things, but it was bizarre because 7 years later we were freehold again up here. Wow. That's unheard of, you know. So we're not now because we came to a bigger place and everything, but we ended up moving back up to here because family were in Whangarei and things. But I learnt to gather fruit off the roadsides. There was it was a plum tree. It was yellow. Looked, tasted like apricot jam. I met a neighbour that way. I was picking. It was up the road from her place. She came up and talked. There were blackberries by the ton. We had heaps of blackberries and things. Look, we didn't ever have baked beans even because they were a luxury to buy a can of baked beans. To give you an example of how hard it was financially, somebody had owed me $60 for a long time and hadn't paid it. Then they told me that they were going to put it in my bank account. So I went and on the Friday with my calculator, and I had a big grocery shop, and it was a whole $58. So, you know, that's how hard it was. But I'll digress quickly on that. I digress lots, okay. So it was Friday afternoon about 3 o'clock, and I'd paid my cheque, and then I thought, oh, I didn't check if they'd put the money in my bank, and I just felt sick, and so I went round to the bank and checked, and they hadn't, and I felt sick because we'd just come through all that drama with credit and things, and the last thing I wanted to do was get a bad name for a bouncy cheque, and I just begged God. I didn't know what to do. I just prayed all weekend, and Sunday night, just before it got dark, I looked out in the paddock. There's a farm around us that had been cut off that people used as a runoff in another area, and they'd said, if you see mushrooms, help yourself. We've got plenty on our home farm, and we'd had a few the year before, and that was great. Well, I didn't even give that a thought until I looked out and saw that the paddocks, it was just starting to get twilight. The paddocks were kind of glowing. It was bizarre. It was this almost pearly light, and I went out and there was mushrooms. We picked 14 kilos of mushrooms that night from the paddock. They were the first of the season, and I knew we were to sell them. I didn't know where, and I just believed God had said to me, go into the town and go shop to shop. So we went in Monday morning, first thing. My daughter and son helped me pick, and we bagged them up into 1 kilogram bag lots, and we went shop to the staff, selling these mushrooms at $5 a kilo. And we sold the whole lot in 20 minutes because nobody else had mushrooms. They were the first of the season. So I was able to go to the bank straight away, and I got there before my cheque did. And that's God. And yeah, he does help you. And with the way things are going now, we don't know how tough times are going to get, but I feel like I have been preparing for this for 30 years. And I don't have all the answers, but I have a way that works for us. And you'll find that for you too. It's what you'll look at and think, I can do this bit. So anyway, yes, I learned to pickle the glut of vegetables, and if the fruit were just going slightly past it, make them into sauce, because vinegar does wonders at preserving. A few spices and things too. It's a beautiful way of life. It's very hard work. Many's the time I've been up till midnight bottling because things have to be done. But it's just what you do. If there's two of you doing it, so much the better. But yeah. So that's our background. When we came here, we've 11.5 acres here. When we came here, it was a disused quarry that they'd filled in. So out the back, they filled it in with all the old horrible subsoil and things from road cuttings and all sorts, so there was nothing good growing there at all, and there's so much rock still, the limestone from the quarry. But the beauty of it was there's a little spring out the back that comes up from in the ground in the old quarry, and with the rock faces behind it, so I always have said that that's my streams of living water flowing out from the rock, because that's our water supply for the stock and things. It's not very good to drink, but the cows cope with it. So yeah, so I planted all the trees here except for one. There were no trees here or anything, it was just bare rock, so and this yucky stuff, so we brought in topsoil. I've made compost. We've been here 22 years, last week in fact, so it's yielding now, and I walk through this great forest and wish I hadn't planted the trees so close, but I'm so grateful for all the fruit they're yielding and things, you know. We've got pests, the apples have got codlin through them. I noticed the pears have got some codlin. I haven't worked out a natural way to get rid of those yet. I know there is, but I haven't got to it. It's only taken me 22 years, but that's all right. Before my trees started yielding, up the road there were 4 apple trees on the side of the road. So they had codlin in them and stuff as well. So I gathered a couple of friends and we went and we picked a whole boot full of bins full of apples, shared them out among people. But then I just, you cut the codlin out, you don't, you know. Kept outside. Good boy, thank you. I'm sure dogs understand that language, but you know. Yeah, so just make do with what you've got. You won't have everything, but make do with what you've got. So I think we've got a date now with some large cucumbers, haven't we? Or large gherkins, are they?
Yes, large gherkins.
Yep. Okay. So we'll see what we can do with those. I take no responsibility for how they turn out. I just use the gherkins, but they said you could do the large ones like it too. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've tried before, but mine weren't that successful. But
what, Mum? She ate them, they were fine. Which bit aren't you allowed to say on camera?
Mum, I told them they were great.
Yeah.
That's what I thought.
I've just learned about lime pickling.
Not lime. Go on, it's okay.
Yeah, lime pickling. Normally, with all the pickles I've done in the past, you when you prepare the fruit, you salt it down, and it pulls all the it sort of does something to the acid, and it pulls all the moisture out and such, so that you can it'll take the vinegar and such when you pickle it, therefore
That'll be good for the bigger ones as well. Probably.
Pardon me?
Be good for the bigger ones because there's more moisture in them as well.
Well, I'm not sure, because I tried to do some bigger ones and I didn't like how they look, because you've got to cut them and you've got that fleshy face and seeds exposed, and I didn't know, like, you've got to wash the lime off. So to me, I thought, no, I kind of don't want to do those. So I didn't. So I just did little ones. So. Yeah, but anyway, this lime, instead of using the salt, you sprinkle. It's just garden lime. You can buy it online as I believe it's Mrs. Wage's pickling lime, but when you do it through here, I think it was at the $20 mark for this little bag, and I thought, well, that's ridiculous. It's absolutely just your garden lime that you go. And I went into RD1 and bought my 20-kilo bag of it for $19. So it's like, no, that's fine. We do this, the most economical way. So anyway, we might go and have a look at these pickles, shall we? And